Hey, good morning, everybody. Hope everyone is doing well. I'm going to get started here in just a second. Let me make sure. Stand by. Can everybody hear me? I don't remember setting up the microphone. We'll get started here in just a sec. I have four major things to talk to you about today in today's briefing. Okay, good. Very good. All right, well, let's go ahead and get started with today's situational awareness. By the way, this live stream is brought to you. I'm going to do one every day this week, probably between 10 and 11 a.m. I can't, I'll try to get as close to 10 a.m. as I can. And then if it goes well, if we have an audience, if people like this stuff, then I'll just do one probably every day of the week. And we'll see how it goes. All right. By the way, this live stream is brought to you by our work at Forward Observer, www.forwardobserver.com. We produce a daily threat intelligence brief. And this live stream is the very beginning of the report. I start off the report with a situational awareness roll-up, things that interest me, things that concern me in terms of emergency preparedness. What we do at Forward Observer is try to front run or provide early warning of these events before they happen, hence why our report is called Early Warning. And really what we want to do is give folks in the preparedness community and all concerned citizens a leg up and an opportunity to kind of stay ahead of the curve on this stuff. So we start off today in Georgia. Fulton County District Attorney, apparently her name is Fannie Willis, is planning to investigate former President Donald Trump and his advisors and staff who were involved in the infamous phone call, which was reported incorrectly by the Washington Post. They basically alleged President Trump tried to sway or manipulate the election vote count there in Georgia. The DA there in Fulton County has assembled two grand juries. They are now reviewing evidence in secret proceedings, and they are going to decide on whether or not this investigation, this prosecution will advance sometime soon. I don't have a timeline or anything yet, but apparently they may end up issuing subpoenas for documents related to that investigation. Meanwhile, in Minneapolis, opening statements begin today in the trial of former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin. He's charged with second and third degree murder. And by the way, on that topic, we at Fox Company will be battle tracking any riots or major unrest that results from that trial. I have doubts that Chauvin is going to get convicted on both of these murder charges for a couple of reasons. The defense team is planning to use forensic and medical evidence to show that Floyd died of natural causes, namely a combination of heart disease and the illicit drugs fentanyl and methamphetamine, which were discovered in his system. The defense is also going to point out that Chauvin was using an approved neck compression restraint technique. Observers expect that trial to last through April. So we expect this to be resolved sometime, maybe in late April, maybe sometime in the first half of May, depending on how speedy this process goes. And if Chauvin gets off, there are going to be riots I'm almost certain there are going to be riots in Minneapolis, and we will be battle tracking those. So if you want to get involved in that, I'll have some more information for you. And obviously, if you live in Minneapolis, we're going to be providing these updates, maybe even through this YouTube channel. The third item on my list is hedge fund manager Ken Griffin. He runs Citadel. Warned that a surge of inflation could trigger a bond market sell-off and lead to a rout in the stock market. Now, he has applauded these retail investors that are piling into Robinhood and eToro and some of these other trading apps. And he says, look, it's great that they're getting into the stock market, taking advantage of these prices. There's a lot of people, and we covered every Thursday. I write an economic early warning brief, and there are a lot of major players who say that the market is in a bubble and that we're going to have eventually some kind of blow off top here. But Ken Griffin said that a surge of inflation could lead to a market sell-off, which would risk potentially large losses if the market does sell off, large losses for these retail investors. And he says that would shake their confidence in the markets and could lead to unrest. In a recent Bank of America survey, nearly 40% of respondents cited higher than expected inflation as their top risk to the markets. There's also this thing going on with the long-term bond yield curve, and basically once bond yields get to a certain level, Goldman Sachs says it's around like 2.1 percent, and I think it's 2.1. I'll have to go back and look at that specific report to grab the exact number. And basically, we're at like 1.5 right now. At 2.1, they say is going to cause some serious market instability. And we're at 1.5. We've been as high as 1.7. So we'll keep an eye on that as well. We do this every day in our daily report. And finally, the last item that I have today is about semiconductors. Now, apparently, Joe Biden had the wherewithal to tell this story in a White House meeting, but he tells this story. Let me pull it. So there's this quote from Benjamin Franklin, and it's called basically "For Want of a Nail." And Ben Franklin talks about what happens in this story where a nail on a horseshoe is lost. And he's quoted as writing, quote, "For the want of a nail, the shoe was lost. The horseshoe was lost. For the want of a shoe, the horse was lost. For the want of a horse, the rider was lost. For the want of a rider, the battle was lost. For the want of a battle, the kingdom was lost. And all for the want of a horseshoe nail." Now, basically, Ben Franklin here is talking about how very small things can build up into much greater things. And allegedly, Joe Biden told this story at a White House dinner. Okay, well, I don't know if it's from Japan or whatever, but apparently at least one of these websites is citing Ben Franklin. But that's really that's beyond the point. The real point here is the topic of semiconductors. And basically the United States is reliant on semiconductors, these processing chips mainly from Taiwan and South Korea. Taiwan is the leader in semiconductors. As I say, it's another reason why China wants Taiwan back. U.S. lawmakers and also defense officials are concerned that a conflict with China is going to lead to severe disruption of semiconductor imports. And I would just add, we don't actually have to get into a shooting war with China for them to say, one of the scenarios that the military is looking at is a Chinese blockade of Taiwan, which obviously would disrupt the flow of semiconductors. There may also be other things that China can do. We won't get into that too deeply, but the point is the United States is at least partially reliant on Taiwan and South Korea for these semiconductors, which has already seen some production disruption this year. There were some, was it GM? There were some auto plants that had to shut down because they didn't have these semiconductors to put in these vehicles. So that basically this all goes back to a drought in Taiwan. The semiconductor production process has to have a clean water, very pure water to cool the machinery and basically the cooling process in the production of semiconductors. Taiwan's had a drought. They didn't have the monsoon that brings all the rain that's then filtered down and used for this process. And so there are a couple, was it TN? I don't know, there's one major company in Taiwan that produces like probably the world's best semiconductors. And so at any rate, they've had some issues there already. It's already caused production problems. If China somehow restricts U.S. access to those semiconductors or blocks some exports from South Korea or Taiwan, then the United States will be affected. Semiconductors get put in everything. So the Biden administration is backing a federal spending program to increase U.S. production of semiconductor chips. Now, in 1990, the United States produced 37% of the global supply of semiconductors. Today, that's down to 12%. The United States produces just 12% of 12% of all global production for semiconductors. So we are reliant on foreign countries. And there's a big um, problem here because the United States is reliant not just on semiconductors, but on a lot of things like rare earth materials. And basically, in defense circles for several years, probably at least going back to 2017 when I first started reporting on this for Forward Observer, the problem has been, well, at what point will China decide to start shutting off some of this stuff, blocking U.S. access to this stuff that we need, our defense industry needs, our economy needs. And as a matter of fact, I'm not going to get into it too deeply, but in today's early warning, I do have an entire section about Taiwan and the end of the American empire. I'll break it down for you. Look, almost every day, I try to do it every day. I write kind of a long form analysis in early warning that breaks down some of these complex problems that the United States is having. And one of those problems is the end of the American empire. This is something I routinely come back to because we are seeing it right now. And you look at the end of the British Empire. That started back during World War II, basically post 1945. Well, Bretton Woods in 1944, I think it was 44, named the U.S. dollar as the world reserve currency. Okay, it was the British pound, and then they made it the U.S. dollar after Bretton Woods. So that was kind of the first thing that took down the British Empire. But then after, I think it's like 20 or 30 years after World War II, Great Britain starts losing all these colonies. Right, they lose India and places, these African countries to independence movements, and basically their colonialism goes in reverse. But the nail in the coffin for Great Britain actually happened in 1956. In 1956, Egypt nationalized the Suez Canal, the same Suez Canal that ship got stuck in. Apparently, it's been freed. They're getting it out of there. So Egypt nationalized the Suez Canal in 1956. Great Britain, France, and Israel decide to invade Egypt. They're going to take back the canal by force. The United States, under President Eisenhower, doesn't like that. The Soviets also don't like that. And Eisenhower actually threatened Great Britain. He said, we're going to sell off our British pound reserves. We're going to tank the pound. We're going to tank your economy. We're going to tank your country's financial system or sector. And so Great Britain said, okay, well, we don't want that to happen. So they withdrew. And then France withdrew, and then Israel eventually withdrew. And that military operation lasted for about a week. And Great Britain was so humiliated by this. It caused a run on the pound. It caused a run on the British financial sector. And basically, and I can't take credit for this. This is actually from Niall Ferguson, who I've read most of his books. He's a great scholar. But Niall Ferguson talks about this. Basically, is Taiwan going to be the American Suez? Britain was shown to be a paper tiger after that Suez incident, and that really was the nail in the coffin for the British Empire in 1956. I think Joe Biden, there's a good chance that he is going to be forced to make a decision on whether or not we go to China or go to war with China over Taiwan. And if he bought, and look, I'm not campaigning for this. I actually have mixed feelings about whether or not we should go to war with China over Taiwan. But if Joe Biden does balk, then the world will see that the United States is absolutely nothing more than a paper tiger. And that could be, history 20, 40 years from now, maybe 10 years from now. That might be kind of the last nail in the coffin of the American empire. And I already think we are already in a decline. I think that will probably cement the United States as a great power in decline. And also, it could cause a run on the dollar. It could cause a massive sell-off of treasuries. As a matter of fact, that's something that China holds over the United States. Basically, China says, hey, we're going to go blockade Taiwan, or we're going to do like a kind of a blitzkrieg 24, 48, 72-hour invasion of Taiwan. There's not a whole lot we can do successfully in that kind of blitzkrieg scenario. And basically, China can say, well, yeah, go ahead and get into a war with us. We're going to sell off all of our U.S. assets. We're going to sell off all our dollar reserves. We're going to sell off your long-term, short-term bonds, so on and so forth, which actually could cause a run here in the United States on the dollar, on our financial system, and really hurt our economy. So that's kind of the parallel that Niall Ferguson is making. Basically, the same threat the United States made against Great Britain in 1956 could be made against the United States by China in 2021, 2026, who knows? Also, it's interesting because there's this new book, and I haven't read it yet, but it's from retired Admiral James Stavridis, I think you pronounce his name. It's called 2034. It's a novel about a fictional war, but kind of a real-world scenario, a conflict with China. And basically, in this book, it goes nuclear. The war between the United States and China in 2034 goes nuclear, according to this fictional book. Future fiction as opposed to historic fiction. And we nuke Zhejiang. I don't know. We nuke some Chinese city. And then China responds, and they nuke San Diego and Galveston, Texas. So obviously, I saw that, and I'm like, wow, that's it's interesting. So our local preparedness group is going to have a meeting, and again, it's kind of one of those extreme scenarios. It's very unlikely, but it's not impossible. And us being in relative proximity to Galveston here in Central Texas, that's obviously something that we should at least talk about, in terms of what we're going to do and how we can prepare for that. So at any rate, yeah, Bedros, that book called Unrestricted Warfare, actually for members of Fox Company, I'm going through that book right now. Actually, I don't have it with me, but I'm going through that book right now and doing a chapter by chapter breakdown of what those colonels wrote about. And I actually mention that book frequently in my YouTube videos and the Daily Early Warning podcast. Speaking of the Daily Early Warning podcast, I do that for members every single day, Monday through Friday. And actually, I'm going to go record that right now. So if you want to get access to our report, the situational awareness part that I talk about today is just kind of the first part. Max every day covers the far left. Actually, in today's report, he has a roll-up of far left activity over the weekend. Antifa in New York City is planning a counter demonstration, direct action against some conservative groups. And then in today's In Focus, I talk about Ferguson on Taiwan and the American Empire. And the stuff about Taiwan that I just talked about, I kind of break that down into a little bit more granular detail. Listen, you told us you'd do the breakdown on YouTube. Okay, yeah. Later this week, I don't know, maybe Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I don't know. I'm trying to, I'm actually preparing probably like a 10 or 15 minute brief on multi-domain operations. Basically, and this has to do with war with China. And what I'm trying to drive home is that going to war with China is going to be a lot more than just about war in the Pacific. So I'll break down the kinds of things that I'm looking at, the kinds of things that I'm preparing for and thinking about in terms of war with China, in terms of preparedness and how do we prepare for a war that's going to happen over there, but that's definitely going to visit us here at home. And actually, back in December, I talked about this Army report. Basically, the Army said, telling Army leaders and facility commanders, be prepared because these areas around these military bases are going to be a contested environment. The 2018 National Security Strategy says you can no longer assume that the homeland is a sanctuary just due to information operations, cyber warfare. They even talk about biotechnology as a threat. And again, that was pre-COVID, which is interesting. And then this most recent report that I read about how the Army is shaping. The Army's planning to roll out what are called these multi-domain task forces. And look, I'm not going to go into it now. I've got this whole slide presentation. I'm going to put that video up here on this YouTube channel. And then I'm also going to do a thing for Forward Observer subscribers. So, hey, if you want to support us in our work, we have, Fox Company is through the website. It's not through Forward Observer. It's actually through my new training company, which is grayzoneactivity.com. If you want to sign up for Forward Observer, I've got some training online, and my next focus is getting everyone in Fox Company prepared to battle track the Minneapolis riots if Chauvin does get off. Who knows? Even if Chauvin does get convicted, they may still riot. So we are going to battle track that and basically get everyone some practice in a real world, allow you to cut your teeth on a real world scenario, real world mission, real world effects from the safety of our homes this time, unless you live in Minneapolis. At any rate, if you want to get access to our early warning report and the early warning podcast, you can go to www.forwardobserver.com, free 7-day trial. Definitely check us out if you like this stuff. I talk about a lot more stuff in detail every single day in that report. It will make you probably the most informed segment of the preparedness community. I actually will guarantee you that. You will be the most informed people in the preparedness community if you read our daily report. It's called Gray Zone. All right. Well, that does it for today's live stream. I'm going to be back tomorrow sometime between 10 and 11 a.m., and I'll see you there. Until next time, stay out front.